Straight off, I need to start by saying I haven't played any of the other Saints Row games, which to some people would be a crime, and they were honestly on my list of things to do, but, well, yeah. But that's kind of why I decided to buy this Saints Row game. As it's a reboot of the franchise, I thought it was a good point to jump in. No previous expectations, a clean slate. My overall thoughts on the game meant I went backwards and forwards and if I was even going to bother reviewing it. Which obviously in the end I have as you're watching it, but my simple thoughts on this whole game so far are meh. And how much can you say on something that you think of like that? It's a pretty bog standard open world crime action adventure game. It feels like any other open world game. It feels like I've played this game before. I mean, in my head I keep thinking I'm playing Watch Dogs 2, but without all the hacking. It all feels the same, from a lot of items on a map to a large open world that, while it has some good spots, lots of areas feel empty. And finally, it has a cast of characters that have horrifically cringeworthy dialogue and using a mobile phone to access missions and other information. The basic premise of the game is your player character and their friends can't afford to pay the rent or their student loans, so they do crime. They decide, hey, let's set up a criminal empire and make a real go of this.
Eli, this cat suffers no fools, and neither should you. Is that a yes?
Yeah, it's a yes.
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
The dialogue is cringeworthy at times, and it strikes me of what people think millennials speak like. I'm a millennial. I'm an older one, I will confess, but I don't speak anything like this. And why did I never think of it myself? Turning to crime to pay off my own bills? Oh, I don't know, because it's absolutely ludicrous. I think this time 6 months ago I wouldn't have cared so much about this, and would have shrugged it off. But with an ever-growing cost of living crisis, the whole thing seems tone deaf to what's going on in the world right now. People genuinely can't afford to pay rent or buy food. Or in the UK, turn on their heating. Developers Volition couldn't have ever predicted the state of the world when the game was released. But the way it's portrayed in the game seems so frivolous, and it's really not. You've also got 4 characters who seem to be the most unlikely bunch of friends, and I can't even begin to work out how the 4 of them ever ended up in the same room together, let alone ended up living together. There are moments where the rest of the gang are fleshed out, normally with some sort of sad backstory that pulls at your character's heartstrings.
Why is it so important to get a new one of these?
Oh, I didn't have an old one. I never got one when I was a kid. It came out when I was in foster care, so...
Oh, right. Let's get you a fucking mecha burger.
But overall, I'd say a supporting cast of characters aren't all that interesting. Which is where I do manage to disassociate from Watch Dogs 2, because while most of those characters were boring too, Wrench wasn't and injected some character into the game. So far I'd say it's the player character, the boss, who stands out for me, but not necessarily in a good way. I chose to give her a British accent and she sounds so posh and formal, but she's literally a walking killing machine. Anything that comes out of her mouth sounds ludicrous, and I repeatedly question just why. Though, kudos to Volition for personalising the voice you pick for your player character. I appreciate that mine does go around calling everybody a wanker, so the dialogue must be unique depending on what voice you choose.
Bugger, bother, and bloody sodding bollocks!
The character customisation is good, I'll give the game that. There's a lot to customise and change. Maybe too much. But if you're like me and can spend forever playing dress up with a character, then you have a lot of options. The gameplay is okay. It feels a bit loose and floaty, that goes for travelling around the map and in combat. Aiming feels a bit odd, but it's all serviceable. Unfortunately, there's really nothing in it to separate it from any other game like this. Weapon wheel, point, shoot, special abilities, you know the drill. Again, it's all pretty bog standard. I think the only thing that does stand out in this game are the bugs and glitches. I can normally take a lot of visual glitches, but there's a repeated one that relates to getting into cars where sometimes you just appear in the driver's seat rather than the animation playing to get in. It's even worse when there's somebody getting in the passenger seat. And there's a lot of stuff like that. It's small and niggly, but there's enough that it's annoying me. While I can take visual glitches, bugs that interfere with gameplay aren't acceptable to me. I was unable to continue a mission because the second wave of enemies spawned into the mission area, but on an overpass bridge, which I'd have to drive to get to so I could get to them. But obviously, leaving the mission area would result in ending the mission, so I was just stuck. I turned the game off at that point, I just couldn't be bothered. Overall, I do think the enemy AI is a bit buggy in general. There are times I've seen them just stop and wait in place for me to get to them. They haven't fired weapons at me, just stood there ready, and it takes away a bit of the enjoyment when it seems so stilted. When I think of Saints Row, I do think of the craziness of what I've heard about the later games. So part of me thought this would have some of that, but again, it's all just meh. Don't get me wrong, there are moments that have amused me and made me chuckle, but nothing that's really stood out.
Hey, Gwen. I follow the convoy. It stopped.
And to me, that's just the problem with this whole game. There's nothing special about it. It's not outright soulless, but at the same time, there's nothing amazing there either. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I assume that comes from having no prior experience or expectations of the franchise. Don't get me wrong, lots of people are getting enjoyment out of this, and that's great. Would I recommend playing it? Possibly, but in like a year. Let them sort out the bugs and glitches and let the price come way down, because I don't think it's worth the full price tag. Something I still would have said had it worked perfectly. There's just nothing truly special here. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate the like, and if you've been playing the game, drop me a comment and let me know what you've thought, and I'll be back soon with another video.